mais je voulais juste pointer du doigt les errements, les dérives de Karl Zéro quand il aborde ce problème, parce que lui, ce qui l'intéresse le plus sont les grands criminels. C'est Fourniret, c'est Dutroux, et la thèse qu'il a et qu'il aborde sur les réseaux sociaux, c'est que ces prédateurs sexuels ne travaillaient pas seulement pour assouvir leur passion, mais qu'en fait, ils travaillaient pour fournir quelque part des proies à des réseaux pédophiles. Et
alors la justice en Belgique a prouvé que c'était pas le cas. Hein.
Et vous allez voir, c'est tout l'objet de cette chronique.
Something is very wrong with this picture, and it does not stop in France. August 1996. 2 missing girls are found alive in Belgium, the only 2 survivors of the man who had become known as the Beast of Belgium, Marc Dutroux. As it turned out, this was not the first time Dutroux had gone on such a rampage. In 1989, Dutroux had been convicted of the kidnapping and rape of 5 young girls.
We are absolutely positive that Dutroux could have been arrested.
Information comes to light. In 1989, 6 years before the disappearance of Julie Lejeune and Melissa Rousseau, Dutroux and his wife had been convicted of the abduction and rape of 5 girls. Dutroux was released just 3 years into a 13-year sentence.
Released by the Belgian Minister of Justice, Melchior Wathelet.
Over the next few months, a series of devastating revelations emerge about Dutroux's past and his relationship to the country's authorities.
Due to his previous conviction, Dutroux was a natural suspect for the more recent case of 6 missing girls and was subject to police investigation. But curiously, the Belgian police did everything they could to ignore evidence that Dutroux might be guilty, including refusing to watch a confiscated videotape of Dutroux building a dungeon used to keep the girls he abducted.
From his release in 1992, warning signs were flashing. A police informant claimed he was asked by Dutroux to help him kidnap a girl. Dutroux's own mother even tipped off police that her son may be hiding girls in his home. Eventually, in August 1995, the police put him under surveillance, an operation codenamed Othello. A camera was hidden in a railway wagon in front of his house in Marcinelle.
This camera was in front of the house the night that Anne and Nephew were kidnapped. The problem was that Dutroux chose to do this kidnapping at night, and the police turned off the camera at 6 o'clock in the evening. Afterwards, they tell us that for operational reasons, this camera has only been turning from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening or something. This is very intelligent if you want to catch someone, a pedophile, kidnapping girls.
The officer in charge of Operation Othello, René Michaud, visited the house in December 1995. Dutroux had recently been questioned about stolen cars, and investigators used this as an opportune moment to search his house. Also present was a locksmith, Alain Lejeune, who was accompanying the police in their search.
Qu'est-ce qu'on entend? Il y a des enfants ici?
Suddenly, children's voices are heard.
You heard these voices and this discussion starts. Did you hear that?
Non, ce sont des enfants dehors. Ouais, ils jouent dehors.
Ah non, ce bruit vient de l'intérieur. Écoutez, c'est clair.
Silence. Non, et puis c'est qui le policier ici? Allez, on y va.
The locksmith said, I heard voices and it was absolutely clear that they came from there, from 2 meters from where we were standing.
The voices are Melissa Rousseau and Julie Lejeune. 3 months later, they were dead.
Do not forget that this Julie and Melissa disappearance was the top story in Belgium. That was the top priority of police, at least that's what they told us.
Michaud found video cassettes during his search.
They didn't watch the tapes. The explanation afterwards that they didn't have a video player. On one of these tapes, we can see Marc Dutroux constructing his cage. The explanation of where it was and how it was constructed was on tape. They just had to watch it, but they had no video player. There again, that's official version. Sorry, I don't buy it.
And at the same time, according to the highly regarded French children's advocate Marie-France Bottet, the Belgian Ministry of Justice withheld a politically sensitive list of customers of pedophile videotapes. An eventual parliamentary inquiry into the Dutroux case produced a list of 30 Belgian officials guilty of negligence and corruption. Amongst those on the list was Justice Minister Wathelet. Wathelet was once again promoted, this time to the European Court of Justice. The fact that the Belgian government had clearly worked to protect Dutroux sparked what Wikipedia euphemistically refers to as a number of shortcomings in the Dutroux investigation that caused widespread discontent in Belgium with the country's criminal justice system. In fact, the revelations of government complicity in Dutroux's pedophile network nearly sparked a full-scale revolution. Again and again, we find the same story, the same pattern of protection of those committing unimaginable abuse, refusal of authorities to investigate, and harassment of those who attempt to expose the abuse. What is the purpose of organizations like Miviludes if they allow this kind of abuse to continue in the face of overwhelming evidence that it exists?
D'autant qu'à chaque fois, il apporte des preuves. Il révèle une réalité effrayante. Des gens qui travaillent à la réalisation d'un catalogue d'enfants en lien avec des studios de photographie spécialisés dans la pornographie. Derrière des disparitions d'enfants se profile la réalité d'un réseau et d'étranges protections, et la commercialisation d'images de viol d'enfants.
Regina Louf is a survivor of the pedophilia ring that Marc Dutroux was a part of, and one of the few who was willing to testify and who lived to do so.
In 1996, this woman came forward to tell the Belgian authorities she'd spent her childhood years as the victim of a paedophile network. She described a world of organized sexual abuse, torture, and even murder.
Her testimony showed that she knew details of unsolved murders that would not have been possible without access to police files.
In one of her testimonies, she explained how a certain person had been murdered in a certain place.
I remember it like it's a film in my head. I can close my eyes and see every little detail of that house where she was murdered.
She gave us some details that made us think that it's impossible to give without having been there at that place, or without having lived that in the way the body was found at that time and the way she described the person was killed.
All of her testimony checked out. She was even able to describe the inside of the house in which a ritual murder had taken place, a strangely designed house, the details of which she could not possibly know unless she had been there.
The credibility of Regina Louf's testimony hinged partly on whether she really knew the house where Christine Van Hees was killed. This man grew up there, though his family sold it before the murder. It was two houses knocked into one, with a unique passage of stairs and corridors. No one, he says, could describe it unless they'd been there.
There was the corridor here between the two houses, and she drew a picture of the doors inside. They were antique doors, and she drew the mouldings. She described the wallpaper and the front step. I don't know how she could have described it all so faithfully if she'd never entered the house.
The response of Belgian authorities? The investigators were removed from the case.
But then out of the blue, the investigation was stopped.
We received a message that we couldn't investigate anymore, just like that. We were sent home. Just like that. Without an explanation.
And the Belgian government, with the full complicity of the media, declared Regina Louf a liar.
Madame, Monsieur, bonsoir. L'affaire Dutroux s'est enrichie.
The flagship program of the government-funded French language channel was unequivocal. De Batz was guilty, they declared, and Regina Louf a sinister and deranged liar.
I think Regina Louf is a pathological liar. She's a woman who's invented scenarios that don't stand up to scrutiny. It's all been shown to be fiction.
That should come as no surprise. Regina Louf's testimony went far beyond what anyone could imagine. Sexual torture and abuse that can only be described as unhuman, conducted at the factory of Belgian arms manufacturer Asco. Louf called this the factory of the video recordings and gave names of those taking part in the videotaped torture and murder of children there. Among those named was Belgian Justice Minister Melchior Wathelet, the man responsible for the early release from prison of Marc Dutroux, and the man who would go on to support the creation of an anti-cult task force like Miviludes in Belgium. The pattern continues, and still the perpetrators are protected by government authorities.
I think this is one of the most important court cases for children in the country.
Absolutely.